Welcome to the American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants podcast. I am your host, Heidy De La Cruz, and I am on the mission to change the narrative of immigration, one immigrant story at a time. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants podcast. I am your host, Heidy De La Cruz. And today I have Miss Karen with us, and she is going to be talking to us about her upbringing in Chicago with Mexican immigrant parents. Welcome, Karen, so much for being here and being willing to share your experience. If you can just introduce yourself to the audience, who you are, what you do, and then we'll get started on your upbringing in Chicago.
Well, Heidi, thank you so much. So excited to start the week off talking with you and your audience. So, like Heidi said, my name is Karen Munoz, and I am a lawyer who is going to be a therapist not too far off in the future. I spent almost 2 decades representing folks who had been injured traumatically and who had experienced a wrongful death in their family. So a lot of folks who already have tough lives, have been marginalized, coming to us for legal assistance. And in that work, I became really aware of the fact that trauma underlies a lot of the communications as well as the conversation and the way that people experience the legal system, which can re-traumatize folks.
Wow, yeah.
So in that work, I decided to go back to school to understand more about the trauma and how to work with folks who have not just histories of trauma, but who have been through a traumatizing event, right? Because if they come to
Yeah.
see us, that means that something horribly, has gone wrong. And in my work at school, I fell in love with the way that we express ourselves as humans, our behavior, our emotions, our feelings, our thoughts, and how that impacts our relationships with ourselves and with others. So currently, I am pursuing that counseling master's degree here at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. I'm also
Wow.
teaching yoga full time with an emphasis on being trauma informed and being trauma sensitive to people because
Wow.
we just don't know how people walk into yoga studios, right? We assume a lot of things. And
Yeah.
part of what I like to do is take assumptions off the table and show up with what's there.
I love that. And so when will you be done with school?
I have internship that I started applying for in about a month. And so about a year and a half. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, so you're almost right there. So I
Yeah.
am actually applying, well, I applied to 2 schools to go back, and do also my master's in counseling as well.
Really?
Yeah.
It's I hear it is uh a very rewarding path.
Mhm.
It can be challenging because again, we are being exposed and have the privilege of hearing people's stories, right? Of
Yes.
their lives,
Yes.
which
Mhm.
just like when I was practicing law, I was like, well, no one really comes to see a lawyer if they're in a joyous space, right? And the same thing
Mhm.
with therapy is you're working through a lot of
Yeah.
things that happen to you in life, and that can be very challenging for people. But I think it can also make the world of difference in
Yeah.
helping people build and lead better, healthier lives, which is really what I'm trying to do with my business, Roaring Grace Legal Wellness.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So I would definitely love to get, in more into when you started your yoga business and why later on and how people can connect with you. Because I love highlighting, the work that my guests are doing. Because oh my gosh, people are doing such incredible work and such incredible things. And I'm just like, I love highlighting how they got there, how that all started. But let's take it back to childhood. So you grew
Yeah.
up in Chicago. You had mentioned to me before, were both of your parents are from Mexico?
They are both from Mexico, and
Mm.
you're already on your path to becoming a good therapist because you brought it back to childhood, and
Ah!
that's where it always starts.
Yeah, it does. It really, really does. Oh my goodness. I mean, I'm from my own personal journey with therapy, specifically trauma therapy, actually. is really what has opened up my eyes, and I told my therapist, I was like, "I wanna be you
Yes.
for other
Yes.
people," like, because 'cause I've just had I mean, it's hard, it's so hard, but I've had such a I don't even know how to explain it. It's just been such an eye-opening journey of, yes, how our childhood plays so much into our adulthood, our relationships, our decisions, why we react to certain things. So, yes, that is exactly why I wanna get into it too, because I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, I wanna help people like me, first
Yep.
gen, children of immigrants or immigrants themselves, just like break those generational cycles, and know that they can carve their own path, to live their life. But yes, okay, let's go back to.
It's so beautiful. But so my origin story, let's just call it,
Mhm.
my parents are from Mexico, but the funny thing is, you hear a lot of stories of parents from different countries. They meet in that country and then they come to the United States. Well, that was not the case. My dad
Oh,
had been here already for several years because he's a bit older than my mom, and they actually met in Chicago. Totally different states in Mexico, but they are connected by this wonderful city, and that's they met at like a an event, and I came along as the first, and I'm the we're all girls. So,
okay.
that's a very interesting, like, thing to experience because in Mexican cultures and a lot of cultures, it's a point of pride for there to be a male to carry on
Mhm. The
the
name.
the name and also the honor of the family and to, protect
Yeah.
the siblings, but, that was my role, and that kind of, as the
Mm,
firstborn, it falls to you to be the responsible one, the one to kind of carve the path for the others.
yeah.
And so that was my experience. But it was also interesting in that when a lot of folks come from other countries, especially in a place like Chicago, which is so ethnically diverse,
Mm.
they tend to congregate in spaces where they already have connections. So in
Yes.
Chicago, we have Haitian communities, we have Mexican communities, and they're very large, right? And we have every culture that has come to Chicago has carved out. There is specific places where they go, where they get jobs, where they speak their language. And sometimes that's where they stay, right?
Mhm.
Well, my parents didn't do that. They got married and we always lived on the north side of Chicago, which um if you're familiar with Chicago, it's very segregated.
Okay.
Even in 2025, that is still very, very visible and clear that it is very segregated by socioeconomic status, but more importantly, I think race and ethnicity. So
Wow.
I grew up in a white middle class area, and we were the only, Mexican on the block.
Mhm.
And I was lucky enough to go to a grade school, public grade school, where we had kids come in from other parts of the city because it was a magnet school, which means you have to apply to get in. There
Okay.
was also a neighborhood program where the kids who lived in the neighborhood could go, and then there were kids who did not have the ability to speak, and so it was a whole sign language program.
Oh.
So very, very lucky that even though we were in this, white neighborhood in Chicago, our schooling was always very diverse. And
Mm.
I went through public school for grade school, public school for high school, and I did my college and law school and now my professional graduate degree all in Chicago. So very grateful for that because I've
Yeah.
always been exposed to people from everywhere, all shapes, all sizes, all the different gifts that people bring, and I've been very fortunate because of that.
Yeah. Did you, grow up speaking Spanish by any chance?
Funny you say that. So, yes and no.
Okay.
I laugh because I just saw my mom earlier, and she's one of those moms that like chases you down the block and it's like, "You forgot
Oh.
your olive oil." I'm like, "I don't need any more olive oil. Sorry, lady. I'm gone, I'll get it later." But in Spanish. Like,
Okay.
so there'll be the olive oil. I'm like, "I'm not coming back for it." But that was my upbringing. We
Mhm.
only spoke Spanish when we would go to Mexico, which we went every single year for summer
Okay.
for years when I was
Wow.
a kid. And of course, you can't speak English to your Mexican relatives because they're not going to know what the heck you're saying. So that was the only time. Or Spanish class, which we had to take in
In high
college,
school.
high school, and grammar school. Yep.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. And so to this day, my mom still speaks to us in Spanish. She is helping my younger sister raise her two boys, and she just had a newborn 2 weeks ago, and Spanish to them. But we always responded back in English.
In
And so it's
English.
like, oh, talk about Spanglish. That was my house.
Yeah, yeah. And what about your father? Because you said your mom spoke only Spanish, so did your father do the same?
No, to each other, they spoke Spanish. To
Oh, okay.
us, he spoke in English.
Okay, yeah. So definitely mix. Okay, yeah, no, my upbringing it was like only Spanish in the house.
Really?
Oh yeah, only Spanish in the house and then I will speak English everywhere else, which I am thankful for, cuz when people hear me speak Spanish they're like, "Oh, you speak Spanish very well." And I'm like, "Yes, I do because Spanish was my first language." But obviously now as I've gotten older and you do schooling through with
Yeah.
English, it's like you feel more comfortable like defending or like if you're going to have a long explanation for something, like, you feel more comfortable in English versus Spanish, but, like, yeah, I'll still talk to my grandma and my parents in Spanish, but, I'll forget certain words here and there, and I'll just throw in the Spanglish. But, yeah, my daughter, I've been trying to get her to speak Spanish. She goes to the Dominican Republic every summer to be with her
Mhm.
dad, kinda like how you went to Mexico every summer to visit, and so I know she speaks Spanish out there, so when she's home, I'm trying to get her to speak Spanish. She's like, "But why? You know English." Like, "Okay, if you get Spanish out there, that's fine, as long I mean, I guess as long as she understands it, and then when she talks it, like, she has, like, that accent, so I'm like,
Mhm.
"Oh my god, you sound so cute," and then she's like, "See, mom, this is why I don't speak Spanish, because you make it a big deal," but okay, cool, that's all so you understand, and then obviously going to in the summers in Mexico, you spoke with your grandparents, and, so let's say, like, at work, do you use Spanish at all at work, like, with clients or anything like that?
It was really a difficult point to communicate to, like, people I worked with that even
Mm,
though so I can I speak conversational Spanish,
yeah.
I can write in Spanish, I can read, but I find it very hard to translate words, specifically technical things,
Oh,
in the
yes.
law, and I would be like, "Look, conversational Spanish and,
Yeah,
actual legal translations, like, the translation matters, and I am not capable of doing that."
yeah.
And so one of my things is wanting to learn how to work with people and teach yoga in Spanish because
Ooh,
I don't see many of those things happening in a place like Chicago. You have
yeah.
to go into the neighborhood that it's predominantly, Hispanic to find that. But the
Wow.
thing is, there's people everywhere and we have like the biggest population of Mexican Americans here outside of, Mexico. Same thing with like a lot of cultures where
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, it's huge here, but we're not offering therapy that's
Mhm.
culturally competent. We're not offering a lot of, the healing services. Everything is very, white in English, right?
Yeah.
Not surprising, but it's definitely something that I think needs to happen. It's something that we need to be vigilant about, restoring people's healing practices and bringing it to them in their language, right? Because I mean, if
Yes.
you look at so much of what's happening in the healing, culture and yoga and all the things, it's a lot of appropriation that happens, right? And that's so I don't know, like disrespectful to the folks who brought it here, right?
Yeah.
And then not to have the services in their own language, but it's being used by other cultures that
Mhm.
have turned it into something else.
Yep.
So, like therapy is something that can benefit everybody, but it has to be culturally sensitive.
Yes. Yes.
And
For sure.
language matters, right? People feel comfortable when all of a sudden, you're at the grocery store and they're trying to communicate something to the, store clerk and they can't find the words, right? And you know how horrible that must feel to
Yeah.
not be able to communicate. And so if somebody says, "Oh no, she's just trying to say this," and then all of a sudden they listen to you, there's so much power in language.
Mhm. For sure. So tell us a little bit about your summers in Mexico. That is so cool how you were able to go. Tell us about that.
It was awesome. As I got older, like a teenager, I would fly out there by myself. So that's where I like
Mhm.
remember more is that as I got older.
Yeah.
Um, because when we were little, we would drive. It would take 3 days. Okay.
From Chicago?
Like, yes. This is
Oh my god.
before it was like, are you insane? You would probably get kidnapped. No. So back in the day, like it was people did it all the time. It was three
No,
days.
I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just thinking about the drive, like from Chicago to Mexico.
It was
Jeez.
an adventure. I would pack all my books and I would the time would go so fast and it was always in July. So my birthday was always
Mm,
my birthday is in July, so we would always go for my birthday and we would leave. And I got to see how vast Illinois is, right? And we would travel
mhm,
down through Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, and I just remember, how big Texas was and how hot it was.
mhm.
And Mexico is very people tend to think and make assumptions about what Mexico is. With
Mhm.
a lot of different things, the way people look, speak, what they eat, what the climate's like. But it's just as diverse as in the United States because as soon as you cross over, you would think it's going to be a million degrees. It's not. The route we would take you through mountains, and it's cold up there. They may not get the same exposure to snow because I
Yeah.
don't know that that's the way that things work with the weather. Is that something that really happens as it does the more north you go? But it would get chilly, and it was not hot. It was actually a lot cooler there than it was here during the summers, which is
Yeah.
especially like now you look at the weather and you're like, yeah, Chicago's
Yeah.
definitely gotten hotter over the years with things warming up so quickly. But
Yeah.
it was an adventure, right? Because um, we never knew like what path we'd end up in because every single time we would go, there'd be new construction, new things being built,
Oh,
new
yeah.
roads, like the super max roads that you had to pay a toll, or you could take the long road through these like crazy mountains that were like kind of terrifying, right? Because there's no
Yeah.
guardrails, and you're
Yeah.
like, well, if and you have two cars coming in different, two lanes sharing this like this is for one, and also there's no guardrail, and then
Mhm,
people just
mhm.
get used to it, right? But when you're coming from the United States and you have guardrails and
Yeah.
there's more than one path, So, adventure. It was totally an adventure,
Adventure.
and then once we were there, the family was so big, it was hard to find time to just not constantly be, like, seeing this tia or this tío, and I like, a
Mhm,
million
mhm.
cousins, right?
Cousins. Yeah,
And
all the
everybody
cousins.
wants to see you, right? Because you're kinda
Yeah.
like this novelty, and the funny thing was we always were made to feel welcome and part of the family, but I always felt different, obviously, because I didn't quite fit in.
Mm,
My accent was different
mhm.
when I spoke Spanish. I'm very light skinned, and so they would like people would say, "Oh, like the güera or the gringa," right?
La
They were
gringa, yeah.
othering
Mhm.
me, and I'm
Yes.
like, "No, but like." It's like you're not quite an American, you're not quite a Mexican,
Yes.
you're kind of somewhere
Yes.
somewhere in navigating this space that's kind of
It's
new
in
and
between.
right.
Ah, yes.
Parts of that, but never the
Mhm.
whole.
Yes. Yep, exactly. Yeah. What, state in Mexico, would you guys go to? Or your family
Guanajuato,
was? Okay, okay.
Guanajuato, Leon, Guanajuato, and the state is very beautiful, and I highly recommend anyone listening to go. There is a place called San Miguel de Allende, and it is this charming European like town where
Mhm.
a lot of expats go. They there's probably a lot more now, with things being what they are here in the States,
Yeah.
but it's a community of artists, and there's a lot of beautiful sculptures and people who make jewelry and people who make art, and they just go live there. And so the
Yeah.
town is very it feels doesn't fe- it feels very European.
Yeah.
The cathedral in the the cathedral in the center, the all of the like the beautiful like houses surrounding the center. All There's just a lot of like it feels slower there. The
Mm.
city that we would go to where most of the family had moved to, because my dad grew up on a ranch, busy, big city, over a million people. all the
Wow.
things that we have, the big mega grocery stores. They had a Sam's Club. So it was like as a teenager, it was fun, right? I would go to the clubs, I would go to the bars. It's like then I would come back here and be like, God, it's so lame here. Like we have to wait until
I
we're
can't do
21.
any yeah, I can't do anything here.
Like
Same. You're
they gotta
reminding
change
me so
things.
much of the Dominican Republic because it was like, you could drink out there and same
Yeah.
thing, like, you go to the clubs and that's what the people do, that's what the young like, the teenagers do, and it's just like you said, you come back to the US and it's like, "Ugh," like, I wanna, continue clubbing and eating and drinking and stuff, and so much more fun out there.
And that's the time to do it, right? Like before you
Mhm.
can actually like get in full out of trouble and you're turn 18, right? But here it's like the opposite where they tell you, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. And of course you're gonna go off to college and rebel. And then that people get into, and that was one of the things that my parents always really were vigilant about is to not turn like the American kids because they thought I would, all of us, we would become like, I don't know, spoiled or like rotten in a way is what they
Mm,
would say.
okay.
Like, so no sleepovers, no going away for
Oh.
college. Um, very strict upbringing.
Okay, so now that you mentioned not going away for college, I was wondering that because you did all your school in Chicago. Like normally people want to like explore or like go out of state, but you did all your school in Chicago. So what was it? Is it just your love for Chicago or was it because of the cultural upbringing of like that's not what we do?
Yes and yes. Um, I very much so desperately wanted to go away to college
Yeah.
because that's what you saw on like 90210 and the shows and people, Saved by the Bell, you would go off to somewhere else, right? Like that's
Yeah.
part of the growth experience
Hmm.
is to fly away and make a life and start to develop your independence and become an adult. Well, they said hell to the no. And I had to go to school here. Like I didn't have an option. And after I just finished, it was like, well, I've kind of already like established my life here because I haven't
Hmm.
really explored anything else. So that's where that childhood upbringing conditioning came in, and that
Hmm.
okay, now I have the freedom to go do whatever I want, but I'm too scared to try something new, and so I'll stay here. And the older you get, yeah, the harder it is to say, sayonara. I'm gonna go travel to San Francisco and go to school there. It's like
Yeah.
the practical side of you is like, well, what about this? What about that? I have to get licensed again. Your brain starts to tell you like that's a bad idea. But when you're younger, you don't think that way because your
Hmm.
brain hasn't fully developed when you're going off to
Yeah.
college. And so it was, it ended up working out great because I think Chicago is the best city in the world.
Yes. Not biased
And
at all.
not biased at all. And I highly encourage people to come here, especially in the summer, because that's when like life is thriving here and it's so beautiful right now.
Yeah, we went to Chicago in 21. My brother-in-law lives in South Haven, Michigan, and so we did a day trip. It's 3 hours to drive. So
Hmm.
we did a day trip and went to, the Millennium Park, saw the Bean and like all the touristy things. And then we went back. But then when I was like looking up things to do in Chicago, I told my husband, I was like, we need to make like a weekend trip or more days to come to Chicago because there's so much to do, and I wanted to explore so much more than what we were able to on that day trip, and so, yeah, I'm like, "We need to make a trip just to go to Chicago," like, and, eat all the, deep dish pizza and eat all the good
Yeah.
food and all that, but, yeah, there's so much to do in Chicago, so much.
Especially the summer, every weekend you'll have multiple festivals, music festivals, food festivals, farmers markets,
Wow.
um, so many like outdoor music festivals that are free.
Yeah.
A lot of like community theater that's in the parks. And yeah, you definitely need more than a day because where you find life here is not like downtown. You've got to get into the neighborhoods, and we
Yeah.
have 70, almost 77 neighborhoods, and all of them are very diverse, but you've got to like walk through the neighborhoods
Mhm.
and experience the different coffee shops, the different art galleries, all the things, right? Because every neighborhood has its own kind of like characteristics and people
Yeah.
and different vibes, right? And so there's something for everybody for sure.
Yeah, I love that. Um, okay, so stayed home for college, went to law school. Did you always know that you wanted to be an attorney, or how did that come about?
No, again, another one where my parents were like, "You're doing what?" Um, it was so I finished college and I just needed to get a job so that I
Mhm.
could pursue my independence as an adult. And I started working at a law firm. And so that was really the impetus to go to law school was what I was seeing at the space and what I thought that I could contribute. Never in a million years did I ever imagine as a child or as a teenager that I would become a lawyer because I am someone who really thought they hated public speaking, and I was very cautious about how I spoke, and I think a lot of that is conditioning as well as being Hispanic female in a mostly you know white culture.
Yeah.
And my original well, when I was a kid, I wanted to be like an FBI agent slash spy slash fashion designer.
Oh, I love that.
And then when I went to college, I loved psychology. That was one of my
Mm,
majors, and
yes. Yes.
I really did want to become a psychologist, and that's what was my plan at the time. But sometimes life takes you on different paths and routes, and you follow them, and you just don't know how they're going to shake out. But
Mhm.
it kind of took me back full circle, and now I'm in a psychology program.
Yeah. Same. I When I went to college, I wanted to do psychology. But, when I realized that, all the stuff they had to do, like the clinicals and all that, I had my daughter, and it was just me and my daughter, and I was like, "Oh, I can't do this right now." So, yeah, so about almost 12 years later after graduating, I'm like, "Let me go back to school and actually do what I want to do, which is be a therapist." But anyways, okay, so you went to law school, and then so you practiced law, you said 10 years? Isn't it?
17.
That was 17. Oh my gosh, way off. Sorry about that. Okay, so 17 years, and then so now you are finishing up to be a therapist. When
Yep.
did you start your yoga practice? Your yoga?
So I've been practicing yoga for 2 decades, and it's actually
Okay.
one of the reasons was able to remain practicing law because the practice of law can be very challenging
Mm,
because it is such a mental practice, and a lot of lawyers, most lawyers, I would say, try really, really hard and take everything very, very seriously.
mhm.
And within that mind frame, there's a lot of perfectionism, and then that can lead to, depression and anxiety. And so there's a lot of that happens, especially if you're not prepared, right?
Yeah.
And people have a vision of what being a lawyer is, but then actually doing it and what it actually is, it's very hard work because again, you have this huge responsibility for your clients. Um, and people are relying on you. So yoga came into my life because I needed it,
Wow.
and it's remained with me ever since. And a it was such a gift that I wanted to learn more about this practice that had helped me so much overcome a lot of my own mental struggles. And I became a teacher in 2014, and I recently left my the practice of law, and I've been thrilled to be able to teach, to students on
Yeah.
full-time basis now. But it's always been a part of, it's for a long, long time, it's been a part of my life. Um, it is something that I think has such powerful benefits. Even if you're into the practice just for the physical benefits, I mean, that's great. But there's so many layers to this practice, and the culture that developed it in India, they really got it right. It's like what life you can discover through your self inquiry through a
Yeah.
practice of yoga, a practice of contemplative meditation and mindfulness.
Yeah.
And
Yoga
I
is
want to
so
share that with
important.
everybody. I tell people like you have to come all the time. I like
Yeah.
literally everyone I interact with. Like the hairstylist, the person who takes the order at the coffee shop. I'm like, oh yeah, just
Yeah.
come on me, take a class because I want people to fall in love with it as much as I did.
Yoga's hard though. It is like I've done it and yeah, it's just hard and I'm just like I like try to get into it, but I guess I just have to overcome my mental challenges and do it, but it is even if you are doing it just like for the exercise part of it, like it is so beneficial and like you get so strong. But yeah, it is so hard. Like when I first tried it, I'm like, who said that this was fun? Like this is so hard. They lied to me. But the more you do it, the stronger you get. But and so
It's
like now,
practice.
yeah,
Practice. It's
yeah.
the only thing, right? The only thing through it is to do it.
Mhm. And so, like, now with you being a therapist and then having your yoga, like, it's, like, gonna be all intertwined with the healing. Oh, I love that. Um, so, yes, so how can people connect with you if they want to follow your journey or if they are in Chicago and they want to go try your yoga? How can they connect
All
with you?
right. So one of the things I wanted to pitch while I was on your wonderful podcast today is
Yeah.
I have a passion for working with first generation students. So
Okay.
college, law school. I wish I had the resources that exist today um, to be able to navigate higher education and
Oof.
systems that
Yes.
weren't made for us, right? But we're here.
Mhm.
So I decided this year so in part of what my mission of my Roaring Grace Legal Wellness is, I've been doing mentoring for 2025, just pro bono, free. Like anyone can hit me up, and I'm more than happy to work with them because we all need a hand, right? We don't make part of the American dream to me is that we don't make it here on our own. That
Mm.
we need to bring others up with us. We need to lift
Yeah.
them because our voices do deserve to be heard, and our physical, mental, emotional skills, gifts, all of that deserves to be in these spaces, right? Because that inspires the next generation to say, "Hey, if that person can do it, and they have an accent, or they're not from this country, their parents weren't doctors or whatever, lawyers, but they did it. That person became, the Secretary of State." I mean, that's a bad example because right now that's a hot mess. But like when you see it, you can dream it.
Yeah.
And I want to be part of the space where others get, I give that hand, and in the hope that when they're in a place where that they have more experience, which we all have experiences. And I'm not talking about the experience of work, but the experience of life
Life
to
in
help
gen
others
yeah.
along the way. Right? People say, "Well, I can't mentor. All I've ever done is practice law." It's like, but you've lived, right?
Mhm.
You've had lessons come to you, and you've figured things out. So of course you can help others. Your very existence is helping others because we touch everyone that we meet,
Yeah.
and we have choices, whether we can make, good, positive impacts on others or not. And I want to be always in a space where I can help others. So if anyone wants to reach out to me on LinkedIn or on my website, roaringgrace.com, I want to help people get to where they need to be to realize their dreams, their mission, their vision of what it is to be a professional in this country.
Yeah.
Because again, we all have to help each other out. Like that's the only way we thrive.
Yes. I love that, and I will include the link to your LinkedIn and your website in the show notes and show description, and you touch a little bit about the American dream, but love, ending the episode with what does the American dream mean to you?
The American dream to me is really thanking those who have come before us, the sacrifices that people made to be able to come to this country and realize their dreams. So to me, it is making our way through a space that's almost so unfamiliar, so unknown, so wild, right? And making it. And again, bringing others up with us and making our culture, our language, what we are about, sharing our experiences. And I love nothing more than people bringing us things like, here's some arepas. Like, that's not part of my culture, but you want to share your culture. So the American dream is
Yeah.
people coming here and not assimilating, but sharing, maintaining who they are, where they're from, and that's what I'm actively really working on is our culture is so wonderful. And before, it was colonized by the Spaniards, we believed in different gods and goddesses. We believed in like the elements, the earth, the water, fire, the power of, community. And unfortunately, the religion kind of stepped in and took a hold of a lot of our culture. But
Yeah.
when you go back to the roots of who we are, our native ancestors, to be able to bring that to here, to be able to share who we are as people, that's the American dream, right? And to
Mhm.
be able to be proud, and stand up with integrity and dignity and say, yeah, this is where I'm from, right? I'm not trying to be like everybody else because I'm not.
Mhm.
And that there's no shame in that. It's a privilege. And so I hope to live in a world where we are all recognized for who and what we are and not what we do.
Yeah, love that. Oh my goodness, thank you so much. Thank you for the work that you're doing. It's so important, and yeah, thank you so much for this, for sharing
Thank
your
you, Heidi.
journey. Yes. Oh.
Thank you for listening to Mummy Podcast.